WDET, I'm Robyn Vincent. When Mayor Mike Duggan took office 11 years ago, long stretches of Detroit were in the dark. 4 in 10 streetlights were out. His team rebuilt the grid and relit the city block by block. He made blight removal a priority, knocking down thousands of dangerous, dilapidated houses. With hundreds of millions in federal relief, his administration steadied the budget and seeded neighborhood programs. And now, one of the city's heaviest burdens is lifting. Just over 200 homicides last year. That's the lowest since the mid-1960s. All this while Detroit's headcount ticked up again to about 650,000 people. It marks a rare 2-year rise in population. Duggan points to these markers when he calls himself a fixer. But Detroit is still missing a lot of pieces. Roughly 1 in 3 residents lived in poverty last year. That's the highest share since 2017. Overall, housing supply still lags. Independent estimates put Detroit's need at over 40,000 additional affordable units, while many renters are already at their max. In other words, the city's recovery is uneven. Many major corridors outside downtown need basic investment. Still, compared with 11 years ago, Detroit holds more promise today, and much of it happened on Duggan's watch. Now he's asking voters statewide to buy that promise, running for governor in 2026 as an independent. Today, we'll test the record against the roadmap. What worked, what didn't, and which pieces can scale statewide. Mayor Duggan, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into what you want to do as Michigan's governor and the state of affairs in Lansing right now, I want to think more about what you've done in Detroit. As I mentioned, since you took office, the lights came back on, thousands of dangerous houses came down, homicides fell, and the city's population finally grew. Mayor, I'm wondering, what's one of your most important decisions that unlocked those gains?
Well, I don't think there's any question what changed in the city was we changed politics. Before I got elected, as the city was declining, the mayor fought with the council, the city fought with the suburbs, city fought with Lansing. Everything was us versus them, black versus white, Detroit versus suburbs. And I ran for office saying, we need to build a city where people work together and everybody's valued and embraced. And in 12 years, I think it's been the partnership with Detroit City Council that has shaped this. We've had, $10 billion in new investments, 10 new auto plants coming into this city. And they know when they come in that they're going to be treated fairly at council. They're not going to be vilified for being business. We built 6,000 housing units in the last 5 years. And again, all with the support of City Council. And I've been really pleased to see the election for my successor. There's been none of this divisive politics. It's been, we're going to represent the whole city. We're going to extend the recovery farther and faster. And I think that's great.
So for you as a fixer, that has meant healing divides. What's one choice you got wrong along the way?
I'd have to think about that. We've had a lot of success.
Okay. I've stumped you. I'm going to come back to that, Mayor Duggan. You've championed making Detroit safer. I'm wondering about one of the tactics that you think really was pivotal in moving the needle.
So I was the prosecutor at one point, and I came in with an understanding, but the most dangerous aspect of the city for a lot of people was we were the carjacking capital of America. There were 750 carjackings, 15 times a week. Somebody stuck a gun in somebody's face, usually at a gas station, and took their car. And you remember they hired Chief Craig before I got here, and he publicly said he was afraid to fill up his car with gas in Detroit in the evenings. We have now taken that down from 750 a year to this year on track to fewer than 75. It's been a 90% reduction. But we did it with sound strategy. We sat down with business owners who said we can't get customers to come in at night, and we set up the green light system where 1,000 businesses in this city now have high definition cameras on their businesses, and we have the finest real-time crime center in City Hall. And we've added 350 police officers, and we teamed up with violence prevention folks who are plugged into the neighborhoods. And when you do all of those things together, you end up going from 15 carjackings a week to fewer than 2 a week, and you get the kind of successes we've seen in the city. But again, it was a function of everybody working together.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the way that you and your administration and teams have been able to decrease carjackings, I think many of us Detroiters feel that in a deep and everyday kind of way, because there were a lot of streetlights where it was just understood this is not a place to stop, even though it's a red light. You're just going to keep going. And there are a lot fewer of places where many of us feel that way. But amid these highlights, we know there's still a lot of work to be done. About 1 in 3 Detroiters was in poverty last year, and that's the highest share since 2017. What didn't your administration fix, and what lever would you pull first if you had another year?
Well, if you look at what happened in the poverty rates, it was a function of inflation the last 2 years. The incomes continued to go up, but inflation in the country went up faster, and so it caused the statistical blip. But you look at unemployment that was 20% when I came in, that's now at 8%. And you look at the Jeep plant with the 5,000 jobs. You look at the Lear seating plant with the 700 jobs. You look at the Amazon distribution facility with 2,600 jobs. We've made significant progress, and we need to keep making more. But there's no question about it. The recovery is spreading, and if I were running for another term, I would be focused on getting it spreading farther, reaching more neighborhoods, and reaching more people. And I'm confident that's what my successor is going to do.
I realize that, yes, the rise in folks living in poverty right now is reflective of really harder economic times and inflation, as you have mentioned. And I've spoken with analysts and economists who are pointing to those factors too. So that makes this an even more challenging time to step in as the leader of the state of Michigan. I mean, can you talk a little bit more about how you plan to ease that pain for folks?
Well, all you have to do is, this is the week to be talking about it. The federal government just shut down because the Republicans and Democrats can't work together. The state government briefly shut down. Now they've got another week because the Republicans and Democrats can't work together. God help you if you're a school superintendent or a principal. They've been open in schools since September without budgets, and you've had class sizes in this state increase because they couldn't hire teachers because they didn't know. Now you've got school districts writing home to parents saying we're going to have to stop the hot lunches. I look at the problems in this state and the toxic relationship between the Republicans and Democrats. I really believe is responsible for the fact that, the state report came out last month. 60% of third graders in Michigan can't read at grade level. It's been going that way for 20 years as the Republicans and Democrats fight with each other. The problem isn't the students or the teachers. The problem is Lansing keeps changing the curriculums and changing the standards. And of course, we're leading the country in people under 30 moving out of state. And we're not building the kind of economy of the future that we need. But again, you've seen Republicans and Democrats fighting over what's the next economic development strategy. And it just reminds me of where Detroit was in 2012, 2013, when people were so consumed with fighting with each other, they forgot to represent their constituents. I'm going around the state saying to people, are you tired of the us versus them? And there's a whole lot of people in this state who don't consider themselves all red or all blue, but actually would like to see folks work together.
So, Mayor Duggan, what you're saying is you feel that your ability to heal divides in Detroit, that's something that you want to take statewide. How are you going to ensure state budgets are balanced and passed on time? How exactly do you fix that?
So when I was elected mayor, the city of Detroit had run deficits for 12 straight years. It was in bankruptcy before I got elected. And it was funny. The state of Michigan said Detroit can't be trusted. They put a state oversight commission to watch us. The city charter says we have to pass the budget every year by April 10th. Since I've been there 12 straight years, city council adopted the budget on time without drama. The rating agencies have given us 11 straight credit rating upgrades. There's been no problem here. The problem isn't at the city of Detroit anymore. The problem is at the state of Michigan. And so it isn't a matter of just healing. You have to sit down with people and find common ground. But one of the things I have proposed, and I think ultimately we need to pass, is we need a lawmaker accountability bill. The state law says you have to adopt the budget by July 1 of every year, but they don't put any penalty in. We're sitting here on October 1 and it's not adopted. And I think the law needs to be changed. It says if you haven't adopted the budget by July 1, pay stops. It stops for the governor, the lieutenant governor, and all the state reps and all the state senators. You don't do your job, you don't get paid. Once you do that, you'll find a lot of common ground. And I think that's something that we need to do to get both sides to work together.
So you want to see more accountability, more lawmaker accountability. You'd be coming in, though, as an independent. And we know Lansing has been in government gridlock this session. And again, leaders scrambled up to the deadline with stopgap talk and road funding fights to avert a partial state shutdown. But with a GOP House and a Democratic Senate and Mayor Duggan, the Democrats blasting you with attack emails that I get in my inbox nearly every week. Tell me, how do you, as an independent, get both caucuses to yes?
So this is the interesting thing. You're pointing out today we're on gridlock with a Democratic Senate and a Republican House. Go back to lame duck last December. You had a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, and a trifecta. And it collapsed in chaos because there was 56 Democrats in the House, 20 Democrats in the Senate, the bare minimum. They refused to work with the Republicans, said we're going to pass this on straight party line votes. The left wing and the right wing of the Democratic Party fought with each other and ended up in walking away with 100 bills sitting there, and 10 of the Democratic bills they did pass were so bad the governor vetoed them. So I think people in this state are understanding that what we're doing is not working. But if you were to rewind the clock to 2012 and 2013, one of the most highly rated shows in Detroit TV was the reruns of city council meetings in the evening. People used to go home and turn on the reruns of that day's city council meeting to watch the fireworks. You haven't had that in 10 years because we've set a different tone where I sat down with each of these council members and said, tell me what's important to you. What are your priorities? Here are mine. And in 12 years, I haven't had to veto an action of city council because I started out with, I don't hate anybody. I come from a family where my father was a federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan. We thought debating politics was fun. I wasn't afraid to go home for Thanksgiving. We need to get back to something that says we can be in different parties and we can still find common ground. And that's what I'm going to try to do.
Mayor Duggan, you're painting a picture that I think many of us can grab onto right now. The notion of being able to debate politics with people who are thinking differently than us without it turning into this cataclysmic situation. And yet you running as an independent, that means that you're likely going to make some decisions that are going to anger both parties. I'm wondering what you think one of those decisions might look like and why it requires independence to do it.
Yeah. So if you watch at who's endorsing me, now I've got almost, I think, 10 unions, more than all the other Democratic candidates together, including the Carpenters Union, one of the biggest funders of the Democratic Party, the statewide Teamsters Council, the Police Union, the Firefighters Union. I also have the Greater Detroit Chamber of Commerce, the biggest business organization in the state. And what is happening is I'm building a coalition of Republicans and Democrats together. And when I get there, my intention is that the people who helped elect me are going to be in the room along with Republican and Democratic legislators to hammer out common ground. There is no reason that teaching phonics, having third graders in small group settings to learn to read and backing them with tutors is Republican or Democratic. It's just the right way to do education. But right now, Republicans and Democrats would rather fight about education and use it to raise money, those emails that you refer to, as opposed to solving the problem. There's no fundraising benefit to solving problems, which is why you're seeing what you're seeing in Washington and Lansing. But, I ran in a race where people said to me, a white guy hadn't run for mayor of Detroit in 40 years, people will never accept you. Turned out the politicians weren't ready for it, but the public was definitely ready for a different kind of politics. In every small town I go to in this state, I am finding people are fed up. They're ready for change. I don't think the two parties understand how fast the ground is shifting underneath them, but they're going to realize it pretty soon.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan. We're talking about his bid for Michigan governor. Mayor Duggan, I want to stay on the topic of education, given you've mentioned it a few times. Now, by law, Detroit's schools are not run by the mayor. They're run by an elected board, and that's been the case since the 2016 return to local control. After your city oversight idea died in Lansing, you set up the Community Education Commission, and that was to coordinate what City Hall could touch, like Goal Line, that's a free after-school bus loop to the Northwest Activity Center with homework help. What did that teach you about where a governor should step in, and what's one change a parent should feel by next school year when you're governor, if you're governor?
There's no question. The biggest reason for me to run for governor is, and what's holding back the city of Detroit, are the public schools. We had a population growth of 7,000 people last year. We led the state of Michigan. We're actually one of the highest growing cities in America, but very few families with school-age children were in that 7,000 growth. And it's because of the public schools. And as I go around the state, of course, when you see 60% of third graders can't read at grade level, that's not Detroit. That's statewide. And so with the Mackinac Policy Conference in May, your listeners can find the speech online. I laid it out in detail. I think we take 2% of the rest of the state budget and for the next 5 years increase the education budget. That would give us $4.5 billion more. We don't change the curriculum. The educators write one curriculum for reading and for the rest of education. Mississippi, which has gone from 49th in America in reading to 9th in reading in 10 years, has 6 reading curriculums their districts can choose from. In Michigan today, we have 450 different reading curriculums in 4,000 elementary schools. There is no leadership going on. And so there is going to be an educator-driven curriculum. There's going to be accountability to the principals to deliver on the results. We'll give them the money they need. We'll give them the curriculum they need. We'll stop changing the rules on them. And I won't tell you that it will be year one, but I will tell you that we will get the kind of consistent year-over-year growth in our education performance that this state desperately needs.
Mayor Duggan, I'm sure folks who work within the spheres of education are happy to hear you invoke Mississippi, the so-called Mississippi miracle that we've talked about on this show, which, again, has outlined how the state was able to pull children out of really, really devastatingly low literacy rates. So that's good to hear. I mean, one thing I'm wondering, even though there is and has been this clear line between what you can do as the mayor of Detroit, and how you can affect change when it comes to Detroit schools. I have heard criticisms that you've been just too hands off when it comes to education in Detroit, and I wonder how you'd respond to that.
Again, well, the people of the city of Detroit have made a decision over the years. They actually voted when Kwame Kilpatrick was mayor that the mayor ought not to run the schools, that it should be done by the school board. So I've been respectful of the voters of Detroit. And while people may disagree with that, I actually believe in following a public vote. But I've done a number of things. For example, the continuing technical education programs have been terrible. We've got the Randolph Academy that teaches people welding and electrical work and the like. I helped raise $10 million to outfit that so that Detroit high school students have full curriculum. And this year, when they didn't have enough money to pay for welding and electrical instructors, the city just supplemented their funding so that those are fully staffed. Of course, you mentioned the Goal Line program, where we've got 10 schools in Northwest Detroit where we run after-school enrichment programs, and a bus that runs in a loop to 5 DPS schools and 5 charter schools and takes them to the Northwest Activity Center after school. 300 young people who get tutoring, who get robotics classes, who get debate classes, who get a whole range of after-school programs. And I've had parents say to me, I had to move, but my kids said, I don't mind if we change schools, but I want to stay within the goal line because the after school program means so much to us. So I think I have done what's appropriate for a mayor to do, but the governor ultimately is responsible for education in this state, and I think that's the next step.
And again, you want to put about $4.5 billion more into schools over 5 years. You want to set one statewide scorecard and replace school principals if results don't move. So the last point I want to have you respond to on education, without raising taxes, what cuts pay for this?
So you have a state budget of $80 billion. I was somebody who ran a hospital system that was supposed to be broke. And of course, in 9 years at DMC, we grew from 11,000 employees to 14,000 employees. Because if you run a large organization, if you can't cut 2% a year out of things that are not priorities, something's wrong with you. And so I will go through the state budget, reduce by 2% what goes into a whole range of other things, because I think school is absolutely critical to the future. And whether it will be $500,000 from this department or $2 million from that department, we'll do that when we get there. But I will take the 2% least important things in the state of Michigan and move 2% more to the state education budget each year. And that's what you do as a manager.
I want to shift, if we could, to
Robyn, I'm sorry. I got a whole bunch of people in a room here. So can I take one last question?
Sure. I think I want to zoom out then to acknowledge this moment, if we could, Mayor Duggan. Plenty of democracy experts say the U.S. is sliding out of democracy. In the last month, a federal judge said the troop deployment to Los Angeles was illegal. Another just ruled it unconstitutional to target pro-Palestinian students for deportation. Meanwhile, the White House moved to federalize Oregon's Guard over state objections. Free speech is being chilled as we speak, with the latest example coming from Hollywood and the temporary pause on the Jimmy Kimmel Show. In your eyes, is democracy sliding? And as governor, what will you do if President Trump tries some of these tactics I just mentioned in Michigan?
Well, all those examples you used, not one of them was the city of Detroit. And it has to do with the way we conduct ourselves every day. After the killing of George Floyd in 2020, we had huge protests here. People expressed themselves and expressed their pain. We did not have a single store looted or a single fire in this city, one of the few cities in America, because we believe in free speech, but we also believe that you are not going to damage the property or injure your neighbors. And I had the leaders of this community who normally are organizing the protest standing up saying, we are going to protest what's happening in the country, but it is not directed at the Detroit police department. Now, of course, you're seeing, and I got criticized for this, but since President Trump appointed Jerome Gorgon, the new U.S. attorney, in May, he has doubled the federal resources to fight the carjackings and the shootings. And we are this year going to have the fewest homicide, shootings, and carjackings since the early 60s, well below even last year's record lows, because we've partnered. And so I don't focus on the areas where we disagree. I focus on the areas where there's common ground, and we'll deal with issues as they come up. But at the moment, we are actually partnering with the federal government the right way. The U.S. Attorney, the ATF, the DEA are conducting raids on gangs in partnership with the Detroit Police Department and the Wayne County Prosecutor, and we're driving the violence down, and we're going to continue those kinds of strategies working together.
Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan is running to be Michigan's next governor. Mayor Duggan, thank you for joining me on the Metro.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back on the Metro here on WDET. Stay with us.